The Utah Mammoth suffer a butt kicking at the hands of the Pittsburgh Penguins, but then dish out a little punishment of their own against the Dallas Stars. What went wrong in one game and what went right in the other? We're going to talk about all that and more coming up on this episode of SLC Puck. So cue the music, because here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to SLC Puck. I'm your host, Austin Facer, and I have this butterfly mouse pad to thank for saving my hand from further damage. As you know, my thing on the show is to pound my desk as hard as I possibly can. It hurts. It hurts a lot. But I think it's an important part of the show. I think a lot of times I use the tone of voice and the expressions, my mannerism, the method, the way in which I pound my hand on the desk to express my mood and perhaps set the stage for what we'll be talking about on SLC Puck. Sometimes I hit it very angrily and frustrated. Sometimes it's out of enthusiasm and happiness. And tonight is one of those nights where I'm feeling enthused and happy. And I have a lot of reasons to be enthused and happy, not the least of which, terrific performance by the Utah Mammoth tonight, a 6-3 victory over the Dallas Stars. What's up, guys? I'm your host, Austin Facer, coming to you on Monday, March 16th. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, wherever you find this program. Maybe YouTube, maybe Apple, maybe Spotify, wherever you find me. Make it a part of your life. Make it the best part of your day whenever you come across SLC Puck. That's what I try to do for you guys. And it's not too hard today. There's a lot of great stuff to talk about. I like that we can juxtapose this episode with, a very bad moment with a very good moment. And I think the contrast between the two gives us a lot of great material, because what went wrong against Pittsburgh the other night, and I believe, what night of the week was that? That was Saturday the 14th, a very depressing loss to the Penguins at home at the Delta Center. The Utah Mammoth corrected their errors, and I think everything that went wrong against Pittsburgh on Saturday, a 4-3 loss to the Penguins, who, by the way, didn't have Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin in the lineup, Utah corrected it. They course corrected and pulled off a 6-3 victory over the Dallas Stars. And I'm feeling good. I feel really good. And I want to thank, before we jump into the show, I want to thank our sponsors, Craig Swap. One call, that's all. That's what they do. They take care of biz real quick for you. Payne Anthony Creative Jewelers, Jonathan's Jewelry. Those guys rock. Don't forget, we also do bonus episodes every week on Tuesday. So tomorrow I'll be back in studio for SLC Puck on Patreon. So very much appreciate those of you folks who are subscribed to the Patreon. That's a huge help. And that show's a little more off kilter and wild, if you can imagine such a thing. I curse from time to time. Something I'm not proud of, but it's just the way I am. I'm like Gary V. Gary V swears sometimes. Gary Vaynerchuk. My studio assistant's looking at me like she doesn't know who that is, but she's not on Instagram as much as we all are. And by the way, I'm on Instagram too. SLC Puck. One more housekeeping item before we jump into the show really quick. In addition to thanking our sponsors, I did a watch party tonight at a bar named Sue in Mill Creek. And then I shuttled over here real quick to get the show up for you guys. You're welcome, by the way. But also thank you to everybody who came out and attended the watch party at a bar named Sue. It was a huge hit. I think we had our best turnout yet. I think everybody left happy and healthy. The food came out a little bit slow. Sorry, not a lot I can do about that, but hopefully we'll get that rectified next time we're over at Sue's. It's a great spot. They do a great job over there, and we appreciate it so much. We have another watch party in the works. We'll announce that shortly. We're hashing out the details. Might be at a different venue. But we do love a bar named Sue, so we'll keep you posted on that. More updates. They're all on social media. Back to what you guys really tuned in for, though, the hard-hitting hockey commentary. And Utah just about an hour removed from a resounding victory over the Dallas Stars. It's a win that snaps streaks of both kinds. Utah snaps a 4-game losing streak. This game also ends Dallas's franchise record point streak at 15 games. I'm seeing that as the headline right now on ESPN. I didn't realize. I knew Dallas had become kind of a wagon lately. They're now trailing Colorado by just 3 points in the Central Division standings. But hey, good for you, Dallas Stars. I'm glad you had a great streak. 15 straight points, fabulous. Whatever, who cares? All things must come to an end. Winning streaks and losing streaks, and that's what happened in tonight's game. The Mammoth snapped a 4-game losing skid of their own. But to understand this game, like what went well for Utah, what I really liked, and I think what all Mammoth fans liked about this game, you've got to rewind the clock to Saturday. Pittsburgh's in town. Evgeny Malkin's not in uniform. Sidney Crosby's not in uniform. Utah badly needing a win. They're playing in front of the home crowd. They just suffered a very disappointing overtime loss to the Chicago Blackhawks. Connor Bedard scores the game winner, calls somebody in the crowd the B word, and when I lip read that, I was right on the money. That's exactly what he called him. That was confirmed in an article by The Athletic, and we'll read that in just a little bit because that was kind of a funny little story, and I like to save the funny little stories for the end. But that was like a huge disappointment, the Blackhawks game. Pittsburgh rolls into town. It's like, all right, well, let's snap the skid. Let's end our winless streak. Let's get a victory in regulation, or hell, we'll settle for one in overtime. The Mammoth don't get either. 4-3 loss, and it was a game that caused a lot of strife, a lot of bitterness, I guess you should say, for Mammoth fans. Utah goes up 2-0. 2 quick goals I wouldn't say both were quick, but Dylan Gunther notches the first 2 goals of the game to put Utah up 2-0. And then Pittsburgh, for the rest of the way, was in command of this game, both physically and in terms of scoring opportunities. They scored the 2 in the second period, which was devastating for Utah. That period went about as poorly as it possibly could. I believe Utah committed 5 of their 6 penalties in the second period. I might be wrong on that. Feel free to fact check me kindly. But Pittsburgh ties the game up at 2. They were just, really pushing the Mammoth around. The officiating, I think, the consensus was, and I agree. I'm one of these people that agrees with the feelings, the negativity that was being directed at the officials was poor. It was a very, very poorly officiated game. Calls were missed. That would have put the Mammoth in a better position. Logan Cooley nearly left the game in a body bag. He took a stick to the face, then an elbow right to the chops at the end of the game. And let's not forget, before that, very scary moment. He slides into the net first, gets brought down by Pittsburgh. Who was that? I think it was Shea. Was that who it was? Let me just pull up the box score of that game. Yeah, Ryan Shea was giving Logan Cooley the business all game. Nearly injured him, and was also the one who threw the elbow at the end of the game as well. So I said, my tweet after the game was like, "Thank goodness nobody died tonight." And it was frustrating. I think if and just to add a little note on that, my own thoughts and commentary on that, is that something that Logan Cooley's just going to be dealing with for probably the rest of his career, certainly as he continues to, develop as a young star in the NHL. There are a lot of folks in the NHL that probably don't like the fact that this hotshot kid who can skate at blazing speeds is now a $10 million a year player. I think they feel like he's a target, right? You put the body on Logan Cooley, you frustrate him, you negate his skills physically, you've got a good chance of beating Utah. And that was kind of the formula that Pittsburgh realized in the game. I think they definitely took advantage of the fact that the whistle was not favoring Utah in that one. And that ended up being the real story of the game. And Utah suffered its 4th straight loss to the Penguins. Again, a really disappointing outing. There wasn't too much commentary on the officiating from the players on the team. They're avoiding the fines. That makes sense, right? But I mean, hey, all the commentary you wanted on the officiating could be found in the Twitter comments, and I think a lot of Mammoth fans were rightfully upset about that. So what do you do then? What do you do? You're the Utah Mammoth. You got another game coming up. It's Monday. You're in Dallas. You're facing a wagon, the Dallas frickin' Stars. And perhaps they wanted to put on a show for the folks who were cheering on the Mammoth back at a bar named Sue. And they clearly saw what went wrong against Pittsburgh, what befell them. And they're like, you know what? We're going to make some changes to our lineup. We're going to make some changes to our mentality on the ice. And we're going to see how things pay off. And it was a stupendous outing, 6-3 victory over Dallas. And they did a lot of things right that didn't go right against Pittsburgh, as I've said many times. Mostly, and I think this is obvious to anybody who watched the game, the difference in this one, and I so badly hope that this is a lesson that our fellas in the salt white and the rock black and the mountain blue can keep in mind as they continue to head into these matchups. Because guess what, guys? Guess what, Utah Mammoth? It's only going to get more extreme from here on out. The physicality is going to heat up considerably as we get closer to the end of the regular season and hopefully into the playoffs. So right off the jump, what does Utah do? They get engaged physically. Brandon Tanev, activated for his first game after being healthy scratched for 19 consecutive games, gets in the lineup. What does he do on his second or third shift in this one? He drops the gloves. He does exactly what he's put on the ice to do. And he does it in a really big way. Let's just see here. Who did he fight? Let's see if this is up on Hockey Fights yet. But regardless, it was regardless of whether or not we can see the replay here on the show. And if you're listening on audio players, you're missing the benefit of the visual. So you can slide over to the YouTube when you get a chance. Don't do it while you're driving in traffic, for the love of God. But Brandon Tanev drops the gloves early in this one against Adam Ernie, is that how you say that? Adam Ernie? And he gets his team fired up. This is just about 12 minutes into the game in the first period. I'm going to put this up on Puckovision so you guys can see this here. There is going to be right there in the right hand of your screen. The gloves are dropped right now, and they're going. Dallas has a 1-0 lead. And Brandon Tanev says, I'm sick of this, guys. I'm frickin' sick of this. I'm sick of being a healthy scratch. I'm sick of watching my team suffer physically on the ice. I'm in the game. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to let these Dallas Stars know that we're not a team that's going to come in and get rolled over here in the Lone Star State. That, to me, was where the game changed, and it changed in a big way for Utah. Brandon Tanev said, we're not letting Dallas do to us what Pittsburgh did to us on Saturday. Jack McBain followed that up with a fight of his own, which was great. Jack McBain had a fantastic game. I thought Jack McBain has been stellar over this last stretch. I think he's been incredibly engaged physically. I believe in the loss to the overtime loss to the Blackhawks, he had 10 hits, which tied a career high. He followed that up with a 6-hit performance against Pittsburgh. I just checked the box score for this one against Dallas. Interestingly, only 1 hit, but he also added a goal. A slick little breakaway with a nice little deke, and dropped the gloves himself. Did he get the assist as well to complete the Gordie Howe hat trick? Let's check this out here. I'm just scrolling down on the box score. Where are you, Jack McBain? No assist, no apple for Jack McBain. But again, really, really impressive night for. And this is what I like to see a lineup where there's a little bit more grit, a little bit more sandpaper. I always get a bit nervous when the Mammoth roll out a lineup that doesn't have these guys, that doesn't have a Tanev, that doesn't have a Liam O'Brien, a Spicy Tuna. But these are why these guys are waiting in the wings. They come in on nights like tonight, they set the tone physically, and they help their team out, and it provides a major boost. And I think when you're a guy like Logan Cooley, and you've been kind of left to fend for yourself a little bit out there, You're like, hey, my job, and by the way, Pittsburgh was trying to bait Logan Cooley into this at the end of the game as well. They were screwing with him. They were trying to, especially the last sequence where Utah had pulled their goalie. They're taking face-offs in the Pittsburgh zone. They were trying to bait Logan Cooley into something. Luckily, he didn't take the bait. I was proud of him for doing so. But Logan Cooley needs some physical support from his teammates, and he got it tonight in a very big way from his Mammoth teammates, most notably Brandon Tanev and Jack McBain. But I think you've also got to give a lot of credit to Lawson Krause. He had a game-high 5 hits, tied for a game high. Can you guess who the other person was who had 5 hits for the Utah Mammoth? It was little Michael Carcone, one of the smallest guys on the ice, who is a Spitfire, by the way. I love Michael Carcone's game. I think he's been fantastic. But the point is, like, Utah has the personnel. They have the mindset to not get pushed around physically. It's good to see them remember that. And this was one of the things that, like, has kind of frustrated me since they've been back from the Olympic break, because remember, guys, I know this is going to seem like this was a decade ago, but when Utah was rolling heading into the Olympic break, they were doing a lot of things well and doing it without Logan Cooley. And one of those things that they were doing well was being engaged physically and not allowing visiting or any opposing team really to push them around. I felt like they had gotten away from that a little bit when Logan Cooley was inserted back in the lineup when they got back from the Olympics. I think that was just something that was, they left it with their luggage wherever they were over the break, but they found it again in this game. And I think listen, guys, there's not a lot of hockey left to be played here. It does seem like a daunting task. I'm going to try to do some quick math here. So 35 wins plus 27. What's that? 62 plus 6 overtime losses, 68. So they have 14 games remaining in the regular season. They are going to run into teams that do have this sandpaper as well. I mean, they play Carolina again. That one's at home on April 11th. That game against Seattle on the 2nd, that's a very big one in terms of wild card, seeding and implications. And another game that stands out to me physically looking at the schedule is Anaheim on March 20th. And we remember Ross Johnston. Remember when Liam O'Brien back in the day, and again, this seems like an eon ago, but when he had those beautiful, ginger locks cascading down his jersey, and he got those very same hairs pulled by Ross Johnston as he was baited into some extracurriculars. Teams are going to try to, I have to refrain because this is not the paid episode where I get to curse, but they're going to try to screw with the Utah Mammoth. Get involved. Say, hey, we're engaged too. We're invested in this physically. If you want to push us around, you're going to get a punch back in the face. And guess we might punch you first. Sorry, that's the way it is. We're also fighting for our playoff lives. Let's take a quick break really quick to just hear from our friends at Craig Swap.
Hurt in a car wreck, dog bite, slip and fall. Just call Craig Swap. One call, that's all.
After a car wreck, dealing with big insurance companies on your own can hurt your case. One call, that's all means we take care of everything. From dealing with insurance companies to helping you find doctors and repair shops, we're here to guide you from start to finish. Call Craig Swap & Associates today at 801-444-4444.
One call, that's all.
And we're back. So fortunately, when Utah was, in the mire, kind of, how should you say, spinning their tires, I guess you should say, in the wild card standings, they didn't suffer too much negatively. They still sit atop the wild card race in the number 1 position. Let's just jump over the standings really quick here, and I'll try to zoom in so you guys can see this. So Utah right now still holding that number 1 wild card spot with 76 points. That gives them a 5-point cushion on the Seattle Kraken. And as you can see, that second wild card spot, if you remember our last episode, there's been some jostling there in that second position. I remember last time we spoke, and it's good to speak with you again, I should add. The San Jose Sharks had taken that second wild card spot So, again, there's still like a lot of, it's a race, right? There's still, as it looks to me, 4 teams jostling for 2 spots, right? Mammoth being the one, they have a bit of a cushion right now on the remaining teams, right? 5 over Seattle, but they're tied with the Los Angeles Kings. The Seattle Kraken are holding that first, or I should say the second wild card spot with a lead over the first bubble team, the Los Angeles Kings, because they have one more game in hand. The San Jose Sharks, though, are lurking in the deep, as Sharks do. They're circling, they're waiting with 70 points, so they're still in the race. Behind them, Nashville, and they've lost 2 in a row. So, but again, it's such a critical time, and I was so worried just looking at the standings. If you remember our last episode, I was like, frick, Utah needs to turn this around quick, because there are some tough games on the schedule to close out March, right? So they play Vegas on the road next on March 19th. And then they finish off their last back-to-back of the season by coming home to face Anaheim on the 20th, right? So I'm like, those are both very tough. Those are 2 playoff teams. Maybe they shouldn't be in that Pacific division, right? That's the weakest division in hockey. But those are still teams that have given Utah a considerable amount of trouble this season. They play the Los Angeles Kings, the Mammoth do, on March 22nd. That's a team that's still engaged in this wild card race. Edmonton, a team that wants to stay above that line in the Pacific Division. They don't want anything to do with a wild card race. And then Washington. Again, that's a tough matchup for Utah. Utah beat them recently, but still, that's one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. We can just scroll up here. Oh, wow, they've fallen out. See, this Eastern Conference changes so quickly. Washington has now fallen out of the playoffs, and maybe they already were, and maybe I'm not remembering things as well as I thought I were, but they're still a team, 74 points. That's very comparable to where Utah is right now with 76. And then Utah will face Los Angeles again to close out the month of March. So I'm like, listen, guys, this isn't the time to be on an extended losing streak, especially when the better teams, the great teams in the NHL are peaking, the Dallas Stars being one of them. Fantastic win, I should add, once again, for Utah to beat them. But a 15-point streak is nothing to shake a stick at, and something that you feel like a lot of these teams can do at this point. This is crunch time. And I'm gonna remember last year when the St. Louis Blues won 13 games in a row to propel themselves in a playoff position. Utah, they can't be in a place where a team gets hot and overtakes them at this point of the season. So I'm like, listen, get back to winning ways, get back quickly. And I feel very encouraged that they kind of found themselves again. And what Utah, the thing that still needs to be solved for Utah, which they haven't quite rectified yet, is still trying to learn how to play with Logan Cooley again. And, it's just been so interesting to just think about that as kind of like the defining problem of the season so far, is learning to play with him. Interestingly, is kind of the number one thing that they have to solve. And when we talk at the end of the season, we're definitely going to talk about the sequence in January and parts of December when Logan Cooley, much like he almost did against Pittsburgh, injured his leg against Vancouver way back on December 5th and didn't return until February 25th. Obviously, there was the Olympic break in there, but Utah got really good playing without him. And I think that came from a certain place of not letting the season slip away. There had been a really tough November there. And so Utah started to fight for their lives in December. They went into survival mode early in the season, and they took that into the Olympic break. And I think out of the Olympic break, and I'm sure there's a lot more tactical reasons. There's stuff that we can look at beyond just a mindset thing. I'm sure there's statistics, that can better create this argument for me. But again, it felt like Utah accessed this primal, backs against the ropes kind of thing back in December. And then that was lost. coming out of the Olympic break a little bit. They earned themselves a bit of a cushion by clawing and scratching their way through that time without Logan Cooley, found themselves in a great spot into the break. But I'm like, you know what, guys? Like, you get back to that mindset as a team. Keep clawing. Keep scratching. You might be off the rope still, but this is the time to strike. Have you ever seen Rocky? I love Rocky. And Rocky 4. Here's what I'll say about Rocky 4. And I have a lot of opinions on all the Rocky movies. It's kind of a dumb movie because it was made like in the late 80s. Most of that movie is pretty unwatchable. Like where they have the robot, and then I don't know, like it was like way too 80s, like way too dated a little bit. And it's like pretty corny, like, you know, the training in the Russian wilderness while Ivan Drago's in the freaking super gym laboratory, you know, getting steroided up. If that were to happen in real life, sorry, Rocky wouldn't win. Just saying. Rocky doesn't win that fight in real life. But the where they kind of jump the shark and make it possible for Rocky to win is when Rocky's on the ropes against Ivan Drago. They're fighting in Moscow. Rocky connects and he cuts Drago. He cuts him below the eye. And you can hear the announcers in the movie, and I'm talking about this like this is real, but it feels real to me. They say, the Russians cut. The Russians cut. What does Rocky do then? He gets off the ropes, and he goes on the offense. He keeps striking. He doesn't just step off the ropes and go, whew, all right, well, we're good now. Let's line them up again. No, Utah, you were on the ropes. You fought your way off. The Russian has been cut. And this is not a slight to any Russians out there. We love Mikhail Sergachev. We love Dmitry Shemishev. All that stuff, right? You're off the ropes, though. The metaphorical Russian is cut. Hit him. Hit him. Strike him. Get back in the game. It's time to win. This is a 15-round heavyweight bout. Utah, you did a great job. You survived rounds 5 through 8. Rounds 8 through 10 were tough. But you're entering those latter rounds right now. If you've got to get the big guns in, the Brandon Tanevs every once in a while, the spicy tunas in to throw some haymakers, do it. Absolutely do it. It's something that's going to be needed. We also need to give credit in this game to Vitek Vanacek, who had a fantastic game for the Utah Mammoth. They did allow a late goal with like 3 seconds remaining. I, however, am going to score this in my head as a 6-2 victory for the Mammoth, and that's just the way it's going to be in my brain. Let's just take a look at like how effective Vitek was in this one, and these are going to be so important. And it's interesting that they gave him the nod in this one. I'm guessing maybe this game went better than expected for Utah. That's always my assumption when Vejmelka doesn't make the start, particularly when they don't have games for the next until Thursday. It's like, man, what are they, you know, is this like something that they just, you know, they're like, hey, let's Veggie get some rest. We'll just kind of see how it goes in Dallas. You know, we're just going to take whatever we can get. They got a great outing out of Vitek Vanacek. I'm just pulling up the statistics right here on Money Puck. Expected goals against 3.4, actual goals 3, goals saved above expected 0.46. So again, that's fantastic. You could argue, you know, I think, you know, take that third goal off the board. Vitek's statistics probably look even better. And you know, Utah also, like, let's just be honest, they also probably benefited from a goaltending decision by the Dallas Stars. They rested Jake Ottinger and put in Casey DeSmith, who, by the way, has played really well against Utah in his career and in the time the Mammoth have been here in Utah, but he had a horrible outing. But Utah, you know, again, they dictated the pace, and I think that they were in a game that they probably shouldn't have been because they were willing to set the tone physically. Casey DeSmith, though, turned in a horrible performance. Expected goals against of 1.8, so expected based on the shot location, difficulty, blah, 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 all that. You would expect him to give up 1.8 goals, or let's just call it 2. Actual goals against 5, so he allowed more than 3 goals more than he should have. So that's something that went Utah's way for sure. And I think, there's also always going to be a little bit of regression to the mean as well. Talked about how Dallas was on a 15-game point streak. That was certainly not going to last forever. And it just so happens, the buzzsaw lost its battery, I guess you could say, when they met the Utah Mammoth today. Hey, really quick before we close out the show, I want to give some love to our good friends at Payne Anthony Creative Jewelers and Jonathan's Jewelry. Don't forget, we do a giveaway, a $250 gift card for every episode of SLC Puck. We also, have a sweet little deal where we can just go to either one of those stores, Jonathan's Jewelry in Cottonwood Heights or Payne Anthony Creative Jewelers in Trolley Square, and just scream SLC Puck. You don't have to scream, but it's certainly more fun if you do. Just scream it, and they will give you $100. It's $100 off your purchase that I don't think you can get anywhere else and in any other way. There are not a lot of other stores that you could run in and scream SLC Puck in and get $100 off. But this is one of those places. And doesn't that make you want to go and check out their jewelry? I think you should. So again, scan the QR code. If you're listening to this on audio player or, something else where a QR code doesn't make sense, I'll have the link in the show description. But we really do appreciate those guys for their incredible support of SLC Puck. Let's get back to the funny thing that I wanted to talk about. So as I correctly deduced, and you didn't need to be, a world-class lip reader to be able to read what Connor McDavid was saying. And, I'll talk a little bit more about this on SLC Puck Plus tomorrow. But, let me just preface this by saying a few things. Okay. I can sometimes be very pessimistic about the state of journalism, particularly sports journalism in the world. I have my reasons to feel this way. I'm not going to get into it, but I do feel like, hey, the real craft, the art of sports journalism is in large part not what it used to be. Maybe that's the best way to say it. I so appreciate Mark Lazarus of The Athletic and his work to jump on this story and jump on it quickly. Because here's the thing, guys. When The Athletic shows up to cover a Utah Mammoth game, they're not there to just write a game story. Oh, the Utah Mammoth went to an overtime against the Chicago Blackhawks and lost to Connor Bedard, blah, blah, blah. Here's what each coach said, blah, blah, blah. That's called a game story, a gamer. Yes, they're pretty easy to do. This is not why they send somebody from a national publication. They're there to find the story of interest. And sometimes the story of interest is something that must be jumped on. And it happens in the moment. It happens quickly. That's what Mark Lazarus did. After Connor Bedard scored the game winner and looked at and actually, no, was this the game winner or the, no. This was the equalizing goal in the third period. Okay. But Connor Bedard was doing a lot of nonsense. He was looking in the crowd a lot and I didn't appreciate it, but part of me also respects it too. I'll just be honest. But yeah, after he set up Tyler Bertuzzi in the third period, he turned away and stared daggers directly into the eyes of a fan, right? So this is not when he called him the swear word, but this is just when he stared into this is not when Connor Bedard called that fan a curse word. This is earlier in the game in the third period when he just stared him down. But it's a great story. And like, I don't love encouraging you guys to, spend your money elsewhere, but this story by The Athletic is worth paying for the paywall. And maybe so you guys don't have to, I'll read a little bit of it. But basically this Mark Lazarus guy just runs into the stands and finds the guy that Connor Bedard stared down. And he's like, what's going on? Why did you do that? Why did that happen? And a guy named McLean Lindquist, and that's a name that we know in Utah. They work in the mortuary business. I believe this is that family. McLean Lindquist said, I kind of deserved it. A little sheepish, a little proud. And I'm just reading Mark Lazarus here. It was fitting that Lindquist works in the funeral business. Huh? Told you. Because it was an absolute death stare. Good writing by Bedard. Lindquist told The Athletic after laughingly telling the child next to him not to listen, that he had been repeatedly pointed at Bedard and telling him that Logan Cooley was his daddy. You know, Logan Cooley did throw him to the ice like UFC style the game before that, so it wasn't unfounded. Since Lindquist, and back to the article, since Lindquist was sitting inches from the glass in special seating in the Zamboni tunnel, Bedard heard him every time and had glanced his way a couple of times before the goal. So after the goal, Bedard knew exactly where to look. It was awesome, Lindquist said. Good for him. I thought it was great. So there you go. Yeah, I think that's fun. That's part of the fun of going to a hockey game. That's part of the fun of playing in a hockey game. I'll say that. The chirp. There is nothing more fun than delivering chirps. There's also, there is one thing more fun than delivering chirps. Responding to a chirp in a way that is then unchirpable. And Connor Bedard was able to pull this off with his performance against Utah. I'll admit it. I have a little bit of perspective behind me, but I do appreciate the fact that like us as Utah fans, we're willing to give opposing stars the business. If you come into our house, we're not happy to have you. You're not a welcome guest. You're going to get some ribbon. You're going to have to earn it. And it's kind of fun. It brings out the best in them and therefore raises the temperature of the entire game. So give some props to McLean Lindquist for that, for you know, and you know, sometimes when you get beat, you know, you nod your head, you go, all right, you got me. You know, I give credit to Mr. Lindquist for that. And I hope when I'm buried that the Lindquist people do it because of this. I'm willing to give them the business of embalming my dead body. So there you go. You earned it. Congrats. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to SLC Puck. And again, huge thanks to everybody who came to the watch party. It was freaking awesome. So big thanks to Bar Named Sue for their support. We got a lot of great love from Bud Light too. So big thanks to the BL crew. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on social media, SLC Puck Plus tomorrow. And we'll be back on Thursday with SLC Puck for you cheapskates out there. So we'll talk to you soon.